I was thinking last week about something that didn't end up coming up, but I was thinking about how anxiety and depression seem like almost mirrors of each other, or I was thinking of them as if like hands, in that they look really similar but opposite. In that anxiety, your focus is really turned out and you're hypervigilant, and depression, you're really turned in and hypervigilant internally. And I was wondering if there's anything in the Dharma that speaks to, I think both of those things, I think everything that arises has benefit, and if we can recognize the benefit and learn from it, then we can move past it. And so I was curious if the Dharma offered any suggestions about the ways that those two experiences gift us and harm us, and how to move through them insofar as that they are, at least the way that I see them and experience them, as being similar but opposite. Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes sense. So you're wondering if the Dharma has something kind of specific about anxiety and depression? Or
well, just about like the shadow sides, and how like take that as the gift and then move through it and not getting stuck. Or if there's something else in the Dharma about those things.
Yeah.
Nothing specific necessarily.
So taking difficult emotional situations on the path, going through them. Well, there's a lot, and you're already touching on it so closely. A lot of the Mahayana path is about transforming difficult circumstances into courage, bodhisattva type courage, and in doing that, cultivating a mind that can bear those kind of situations, understand them, increase empathy for others. In a certain way, in this tradition, Karma Kagyu, all the thoughts like that, it's funny, when in the West we say emotions and thoughts, like maybe we think they're different from one another, but they're completely tangled. You know, a set of thoughts, let's say, about anxiety. And there's bodily parts to it too. You know, anxiety is fear. You know, we're afraid. So we've got the body thing going, we've got thoughts going, and then we call it emotion. I keep wondering lately what emotion exactly is. But we can also wonder what a body is. We can also wonder what thoughts are. So one of the main techniques is to keep looking straight at it, whatever it is. In all those levels, I have to work with anxiety a lot. I think I came in with it. We come in with different things. Some people come in with lots of anger, or lots of grasping. I came in with some fear. So one of the main techniques, and I don't want to call it a technique because that minimizes it, a main truth, is these are all just passing through. But we grab it and we make a big deal of it. And I'll just share from my own experience, both doing many years of therapy, both as a peer counselor and as a client, and working the Dharma. There's some kind of therapy that can help you move through and out, and other kinds of therapy can make it really solid. Like it's now your story of your life. And we have to kind of wend our way through that and watch that. We're very psychological people in the West, which there's nothing wrong with, but we can make anything solid. I can make my anxiety very solid, like a huge obstacle in my life, so then it's no fun. So the transformative part of seeing that it has no solid basis, what's it made up of? Really, to sit and do a contemplative meditation. What is this made up of? Bodily sensations. Are they with me all the time? No. Rise, fall, disappear. Set of thoughts that I'm really used to, And a button can get pushed. Like right now, I think in the country, I'm just going to say what I've been saying to friends, we're all PTSD. We are all PTSD. If you watch the news at all, you are being constantly traumatized. Boom, 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 push the button. These many killed, this war, we're going to bomb, we're going to do this. So we have this sense of trauma, and it becomes kind of bodily. I must protect. So one thing I use is, in this moment, Zopa, are you safe? Look around. In a certain way, yes. But never really, because we're relying on the self, my bubble. I'm trying to keep my bubble and my area and my own self safe, and it might extend to my family, maybe to all of you. But it's quite hard for us to understand, and this is the task of Buddhism. There isn't any separate self that's being anxious or depressed. You just keep deconstructing it in sessions and on and off the cushion. Who is this separate self who's so afraid? Who is this separate self that needs to be protected? I'm different every moment. Easy to say, really almost impossible to understand. The Zen saying, one of them is the one who stands up is not the same as the one who sat down. We're changing like that. Even Western science tells us that. Body's shifting constantly. I'm aging right now, right this minute. I can't stop it. You are too. Your minds are following some kind of concepts I'm putting out, but if we could hop into one another's minds, we'd be like, wow, how are they hearing that? Yeah? So that's just groups of thoughts based on patterns. Patterns aren't solid either. Emotions going through. It's all going through. So that's one of the most basic ways Dharma deals with it. There are many other ways in the mind training texts. So I have little tricks. They'll give you tricks, and they're very useful to memorize and use. So, what do I use for anxiety? I really hate anxiety, and I'm trying to not hate it. That's not helpful. You see, you have the first level, whatever it is, anxiety, anger, gripping, grasping, attachment. Then we add on, I hate this. Now we're just putting kleshas on top of kleshas, right? So whenever we can just go, hi anxiety, hey, there you are again, hi, hello. Just be with it till it's gone. And I think what makes these persistent, so the teachings say, is that we grasp it and we make it into our identity. I'm an anxious person, I'm a depressed person. So there's a big I that is these things. And that's the work. No, you're not. One time I walked into the kitchen here, and Lama Michael just happened to be standing there. by himself for some odd reason, because there were people around. And it was shortly after the 1-year retreat, which if you've been on any kind of retreat, even a weekend or a longer one, they're quite hard to come out of in a certain way. You're back in the busy world. And he said, "Oh, hi Zopa, how are you doing?" And I said, "I'm fine, but I'm kind of feel crappy," I think was the word I used. And he said, "Really? Why is that?" And I said, "Because I'm still stuck in samsara." And he looked straight at me and said, "No, you're not." And we both just laughed. And in that moment, I wasn't. I could see, oh, no, I'm not. It can't be like that. It can't be like that. But we're so trained in this one direction, and then we're very impatient about turning the boat. We want that instant thing, and we want to stabilize that and be blissful and happy, and yay, it's good to want that, and it's good to work on it, but Pema Chodron says, start where you are. So we have to start where we are, encourage ourselves. But I think the main technique is getting to know those states of mind with a gentle precision, a non-judgment, and a knowledge that they don't last. Because they're by nature impermanent. You couldn't even make them last if you wanted to. You could sit really, really hard and try to make that last, but good luck. Any sense that it's not moving, again, is just our habitual pattern, grabbing an eye that's separate and piling around all these states. At the same time, we need to be very compassionate towards ourselves. We're suffering beings. Suffering's to be known. Cause of suffering's my own mind. That's to be understood. Suffering's to be abandoned. I think sometimes I like to hold on to mine. No, like's not the right word. I'm habituated to holding on to it because it's part of that identity. That identity. What would I be without that?
Yeah.
So I want to hear from other teachers here. I know you've worked with this.
Yeah, well,
Please share.
So I spent a long time, at least 7 years of my life is with depression, and my experience is similar. That well, I guess the way I would put it is that anxiety and depression are two different ways of interpreting and experiencing your own life energy. And anxiety is more clearly your own life energy. It's coming in a way that's that doesn't feel good, but it's similar to the life energy that you seek out intentionally. You know, if you go to an amusement park and ride on a roller coaster, you're actually trying to evoke it's the same life energy. It's just the context and the story that goes along with it drastically changes how you experience it. And then depression just seems like a strategy of trying to protect oneself from those feelings by making your world smaller. And so you avoid the things that trigger anxiety. But as you do that, then your world gets smaller and smaller and sort of more barren. And, you know, last week, Margaret sent me this thing about this Tibetan medicine doctor who was going to talk about mental health. So I went to see him, and his entire talk was about the Tibetan approach to mental health, and he spent a whole hour and a half saying, practice the 4 immeasurables. So he said, he said, your mind is a garden, and what we tend to do is we tend to work very hard to cultivate a single flower. And he said, and this makes us very vulnerable because, flowers don't last forever. And when your flower's dying, then you're like, oh crap, I've got to protect the flower. And he said, that's why it's important to cultivate these in a universal sense, in an unlimited sense. And he said, and somebody asked him, well, but how do you do that? And he just said, you just practice loving kindness. And he did a simple loving kindness meditation. And he said that's it. And he said, sorry, it's so simple. But he said, I think I think we try to make these things more complicated than they are. And it's a matter of practice. And that was certainly my experience, that I could, actually the process of trying to figure all of this stuff out actually made me more depressed. It was actually the engine, the vehicle by which the depression was maintained, because I was trying to figure out what it was and how to navigate through it and how to deal with it. And if you think hard about that stuff and you pay attention, you'll notice that it's kind of depressing. And
My depression's depressing.
well, it is. And actually, so there's a very good book about sort of Dharma and depression called The Mindful Way Through Depression. It's written by the people who've been involved in the Mind and Life Conference for decades. And it's extremely lucid. And there's another one on anxiety, which I'm not sure if it's as good. The depression one is extremely good. And it makes the point that actually that's what depression, that's how a depressed mood becomes depression, is actually through this sort of ruminative process where you're trying to figure it out and trying to deal with it and trying to work with it. And they have very nice sort of scientific framework to explain how that happens. But it accords with my experience of it. And so I think the key is to find a practice that makes you feel better. And it could be a shamatha practice, it could be a loving kindness practice, it could be Shinrezi, and to do it. And this Tibetan doctor recommended loving kindness meditation. And actually when he taught it, it was almost entirely directed just at one's self. It was loving kindness meditation for oneself, and then using somebody that you loved or experienced as loving you as the object. And he said, and that's it. Just do that. And everybody was like, no, it can't just be that. He's like, no, that's it. He was cute too. He's like, and if you don't have anybody that like that in your life, then you'll have to use me. So that was pretty sweet. And there's a to Zopa's point about there's an amazing internet video from an internet celebrity that I wonder if I can play it. It's just 2 minutes long, but he really captures this concept that Zopa was talking about. The title is called "You Are Not Depressed."
I'm not depressed. Stop saying that. Oh, snap. I got people mad already, been ready to go off on me in the comments. How dare you question my depression? Hold on. Don't be so quick to protect that which causes you suffering. Let's speak honestly. You may be experiencing a depression right now, but you are not depressed. And I'm going to show you why. And this shift, if remembered, will change your life forever. You ready? See, you are the sky. Depression, frustration, sadness, these are passing clouds. They come, they go. Some are black, some are white. Sometimes they pepper the sky, and sometimes they fill the sky. But they always come and go. Because they, even though they seem like it, are not the sky. If they were, then when they went, the sky would go too. And the sky is always there. So likewise, if frustration, depression, and sadness were you, then when they went, you would go. But that's not what happens, is it? But no, you are always here. You are that which these things appear in front of. You are the witness, the perceiver of depression. And that which perceives depression is not depressed. See, imagine this remote control is depression. So you got you, and then you got depression. Depression comes, it goes, it comes, it stays for a while, it goes. But you are always here. Big problems come when you start to identify as depression. Never identify with that which comes and goes. Now pause the video right now and take some time with this. This is life-changing. There's an old saying, before enlightenment, I was depressed. After enlightenment, still depressed. But it's totally different now. I no longer identify with the depression. I realize that it wasn't me. I observe it, allow it to come and go without resisting it. This is freedom. This is truth. You are greater than anything that comes and goes. Peace.
And the only thing I would say is, you know, in Buddhism, we also, that you that's always left, the you that's the sky, is actually our Buddha nature. So, and it also is empty of that individual self. So, beautiful. Thank you for the
How cool is that?
Who is it?
He's so excited about it, too.
Yeah, I know.
Prince, yes.
Yeah.
So enthused.
Yeah.
What else over here? Anything?
Well, I think the only thing to add is to keep it simpler. We've been talking so long that we might be in danger of
Right now.
having made it more complicated than the illustrious teacher was saying it is. And it's really true that it is exceptionally simple. And that process of, and we do not give credit to the power of just cultivating something positive. It's incredibly powerful, but we want to flip back and we sort of like, well, is it all gone yet? Is it gone forever yet? Oh, that didn't work.
Yeah.
But to stay with the cultivating that which is very simple, positive possibilities over and over again. And also use the time to find out just what's going on, just to look directly at the experience as it comes and goes. You go farther and farther. So, and right there you have the union of the two bodhicittas.
Yeah. So it's easy, and then why are we still stuck? We don't do it. That's how simple it is. We hear this stuff, and then we're out on our own, and we don't do it. So one of the problems is this, or obstacles, is not remembering. And no one can help you remember. You need to say, I'm going to remember, I'm going to do this. Every time this comes up, I'm going to, in my mind, see it and work with it. That's what I'm going to do. Because we are cultivating our own garden. I can't cultivate yours. I can cultivate mine, and that will affect you. So let's see if there's other. Yeah, Suvansh.
I've been, so for the past couple of months I've been reading this text I was talking to Bill and Dora about it. It's a text by Alan Wallace, and he writes on transforming adversity and felicity. And he has a recording on it. And one of the things that comes up is this theme of depression. And it's slightly different. You know, the difficulty I have with watching the emotion is that I'm already lost in the thought, you know, in the 10th level thought. I'm already lost there before I can even catch
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
But his teaching is interesting in that he quotes and says that it's actually our own habitual patterns that have caused the depression in the first place. And in particular, it's our attitude towards adversity. And, you know, looking down on it and, you know, pushing it away, etc. And so the whole teaching that is taught in this book is that to changing your attitude to adversity. You know, one is not pushing it away, but then the other one, which is more important, is generating a sense of good cheer when adversity arises. And if that is cultivated, you know, what is said there is that is a counter to depression.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I, you know, that to me, you know, gives me something to work on, because my mind sometimes, I mean, you know, just catching the emotion there is too difficult for me sometimes. It's gone.
Yeah.
And when I'm deep down, you know, in that thought, then the only thing that seems to be working for me recently is this idea, well, why am I pushing away adversity?
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that you've brought that up, because it's the Bodhisattva path. They say when we cultivate these practices on the Bodhisattva path, we actually become happy when adversity arises. Why? Because we say, now I see where I'm stuck. Now I see it. And now I can work with it. Now I can do this. It's like, it's the way that the Bodhisattva does not believe there's enemies. Even within our own attitudes, that's not an enemy. So depression wouldn't arise as an enemy. It arises as a friend. And you say, now I see this is a habit pattern of mine. And yes, if it's strong, the teachings are that we came in with that karmic influence. We've been cultivating it for lifetimes. Strong anger, we cultivate, you know, living in kind of hell-realmish places and always mad and always wanting to hurt others because we're scared, you know. We can cultivate the graspy kind of mind, end up totally addicted to whatever. And karma is such that we don't come in with the blank slate. That's not the Buddhist teachings, that we come in blank slate. That's a Western idea. We come in with all kinds of work to do and all kinds of strengths too that we've developed over our lifetimes. You wouldn't be here, you know, in this beautiful place talking about ways to cultivate wisdom and compassion without that, you know, good karmic tendencies too. And that's very important what you've raised, to be able to embrace it in a way, to say this can be something I can work with, instead of, oh my God, I'm just riding the waves and being swept away. Yeah.
This is my first time here. Eric brought me today. I've been thinking about coming for a while.
Welcome.
One point I would raise here is a lot of time people let their situation define them. And there is a very famous little movie called From Homeless to Harvard. Liz Murray, she was raised by parents that were drug addicts and all sorts of situations, and then she becomes homeless. And finally, the school janitor and his wife decided to give her a little place to live. and she gets a perfect SAT, get a full-time scholarship from Harvard, both room and board. And she was asked, what kept you going in the worst adverse situation? And her answer was, I never let my situation define me. So a lot of time what happens is a situation comes, and we live in USA, right, which is nothing but a shopping center. Everyone is comparing. Everyone is comparing. Okay, so I have this, but they have that, and this is basically a first world problem, or as they say, the white people problem, right? So sometimes the big problem will be, oh my God, my Groupon for sushi has expired. That's the biggest problem you solve. And I'm thinking about doing a venture and a movie around it. So the issue that we have is every now and then we are going to be put into a dark spot, no matter what you do.
Yeah.
Happened to me a little over 17 years ago. My 11-year-old son was killed in a car accident, drunk driver, all that, Lake Oswego. And a month after that, I'm driving around with my wife, and a thought occurred to me that why don't we do something in his memory? And so we ended up creating a foundation. It took off, 11, 12 countries, building schools, all that. And through that work, I ended up visiting two of the largest garbage dumping areas in the world where we build schools, Jakarta and Karachi, Pakistan. And when you go and see the plight of these people and situation, what they are in, and then we look at ourselves at how good we have it.
Yeah.
And then you add this Buddhist saying that be thankful for what you have, rejoice the way things are. When you realize there is nothing lacking, the world belongs to you. So idea is, how do you turn the light switch on in a dark room? So we have a choice. We can talk about depression, darkness, poor me, all that, or we can turn the light switch on. So that's just my way of fighting.
Thank you. And what's your name?
Muhammad.
Mohammed. Thank you. Welcome. Yeah, we're all talking about the same thing, allowing the situation to define us. And part of the situation is that fundamentally we don't understand what we are. Fundamentally, we don't understand what we are. Fundamentally, we don't understand our truest nature. When we connect to our truest nature, the situation no longer defines us. We simply use it to increase more wisdom and compassion in the world. So whether it's a son dying, depression, anxiety, all this news about people going off the deep end, it's really good to build a habit of what you will do when adversity arises. Because as Suman says, and as Muhammad says, it will arise. Of course, we have samsaric minds. People are stuck in anger and aversion and attachment. And we're not talking about those other people, us. We're still stuck. But we don't have to be. We don't have to be, because our Buddha nature is right here, the Buddha nature of any other being, right there. Never destroyed. Never destroyed. My teacher used to say the only way you can fail at Buddhism is try to destroy your Buddha nature, because you will fail at that. You cannot destroy it. So there's no other failure. Again, I want to hear from our friends. Anything to add?
I'd add one thing kind of on the level of simplicity. Suvanchu mentioned not pushing away, not pushing away the adverse circumstance, the adverse feeling, and that's a critical piece in the development of insight. If we actually want to look into something, we actually have to be able to look and not jump ahead to the pushing it away, to making it stop. But for most of us, as you said, the habit patterns, we can't actually see how deeply we're lost in the patterns of thought. So for most of us, taking the course of cultivating something positive is the biggest opportunity to create some point of freedom, and then from there, when we have some sense that there is some possibility, even for a moment, there's some degree of freedom, even for a moment, in cultivating the positive outlook, then we might have some strength to actually look more carefully at the situation as it rises. But for most of us, I think most of the time best spent on cultivating the four immeasurables, other positive outlooks, finding a way to find some way to channel energy in a very positive fashion, however that is. I thought your example was very good from the perspective of you had kind of a moment of planting a seed where you recognize some possibility, and then to see how that seed could grow. Your story is very inspiring in that regard. It's good to be reminded, even just kind of that moment where you recognized there's something positive is possible. I can plant something positive. Very inspiring.
You know, the lotus does grow out of the swamp. So you know that metaphor. The lotus of the Dharma, the Buddha, grows from the swamp. So the swamp of our suffering is the garden fertilizer. How else would we ever know anything? There's so many stories about people having serious illnesses and coming out of that wiser, kinder, more compassionate, hearts open, parents losing children, people going through war, torture, coming out of that. So it's always transformative if we allow it to be. When we clench down, we're stopping the transformation from happening. And we're sitting with our little tight, as Eric said, that compressed bubble.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions? Comments? You know, in a certain way, we really need to be doctors to our own minds. You know, the metaphor of the Buddha as doctor, the Dharma as the huge medicine cabinet, the Sangha, the lay Sangha, monastic Sangha, and the Sangha of those who realize reality as it is, are the nurses. So we've got a doctor, we've got medicine, and we've got nurses, but we have to take the medicine. You can have all of those conditions, and if we don't take it, that is, grow it, cultivate, do the practices, then it just sits in the medicine chest, and we admire it, but we don't get well. Dora?
On the anxiety theme, there's just the practical, and I feel like this is kind of a Western and an Eastern thing that the Dalai Lama will say, or other teachers, that if you're bogged down by, whatever anxiety or that kind of thing, do you, that you can stop and just check it out and say, is there something I can do about this? Is there something to do to fix this thing I'm worried about? And if there's something you can do, and you then just do that. And for the rest of it, what are you gaining by worrying about it? And it's like so simple again, and yet so hard to let go of that worry. but, and then there's the connection then with our shamatha practice, I think helps us cultivate that ability. So I was hearing another, or a neuroscientist talk about the, looking at meditators' brains and seeing that they can, so whatever, this was a test where people knew that something painful was going to happen. It was going to be a painful sensation and it was going to go away. And so the non-meditators had brain changes before the thing happened that were like painful, like they were already experiencing difficulty. And then during it, and then afterwards, they also had this from kind of ruminating and dwelling on what the pain that had just happened. So they had a long period of discomfort, whereas the experienced meditators, like beforehand, there's nothing. During the pain, there was whatever happens in the brain, and then afterwards it was nothing again. So it's kind of that there is something where we are exercising kind of that ability to let go in the sort of anticipation phase that we struggle with, and with the afterwards thinking about how bad it was phase. that those things, maybe the painful sensation is, that's going to happen, but we make more of it, and we shouldn't minimize our shamatha practices.
There's a kind of bumper sticker saying that captures what Dora is saying. Pain is inevitable in samsara, but the suffering is optional. So again, not allowing our situation to define. Pain's inevitable in samsara, but the suffering over it's optional.
I have...
We're out of time, so please stay after and we'll be here. Thank you so much for everything you shared.
By this virtue may I quickly realize Mahamudra and establish all beings without exception in this state.
Very much.
Zopa.